a legendary dragon was reborn in the body of a human, but he tries to hide his epic powers from everyone. I'm Nashi Recaps, and let's take a look at this anime that was recently released. At the beginning of everything, a group of humans attacks a legendary dragon, who, in turn, doesn't understand why the humans are trying to kill him, as he has never harmed them. On the contrary, on several occasions, he had even been an ally of humanity. Without receiving any justification, the dragon resigns himself and surrenders his soul to the Reapers, hoping they will take it to the underworld, where he can finally achieve his eternal rest. After this, he reincarnates as a baby, and his new mother names him Dolan, introducing him to her family. Years later, when Dolan is about 16, he is approached by a girl named Ire, who comes to him concerned because he seems distant. Dolan reassures her, saying everything is fine, and begins talking about Verum, the place where he was born as a dragon. Verum is a small village on the northern border of the continental Deercrest Kingdom, where agriculture is the main economic activity. Thus, Dolan gets up every day to work in the fields, making a living as a farmer. Although he is only 16, he explains that in the village, people are considered adults at that age, and it's normal for them to live alone, like him, who left home the previous year. When meeting his brother to go fishing, Dolan is asked about the swamp he was supposed to investigate the next day. He explains that, about a month ago, the lizards disappeared from the swamp, and something needs to be done about it. His brother, however, says that this should be the garrison's job, not the villagers', reaffirming that there's no reason for Dolan to go there by himself. Dolan, on the other hand, reminds him that Captain Ban and the others are already busy protecting the village, so he feels it's his duty to help. Later, he meets Albert and Melita, who briefly talk about the training they will give to the village children. But Dolan soon says goodbye and heads back home. As he reflects on the village's problems, he considers that there are many monsters and bandits around, limiting the soldiers' actions, as they cannot solve all of Verum's issues, given that their military power is weaker than that of the cities. Therefore, the villagers often have to protect themselves. While doing chores at home, Air appears and calls him to the magic training they had agreed to do that day. Upon reaching the designated place, Dolan demonstrates his magic, impressing Ire. His tutor praises him, saying his offensive magic is truly perfect, but Dolan attributes this success to her excellent teachings. She then decides to start practicing healing magic, an area in which he struggles more. After the lesson, Dolan walks through the village again when he is approached by the village chief, who introduces Christina, a noble warrior who will be staying in the village for some time. The chief explains that the girl is a young noblewoman and asks Dolan to treat her with the utmost respect. After greeting each other, the chief bids farewell and takes Christina with him, while Dolan returns to his agricultural work. On the way, he comments on the risk of freezing to death in the village during the harsh winter, comparing it to the summer, which is extremely hot. Reflecting on his current life and the life he led as a dragon, Dolan concludes that humans indeed live in a hostile environment. Upon arriving at his parents' house, he is welcomed by Marco, his younger brother, who tells the parents about the visit. They are happy, and they all sit down to have dinner together. During the meal, Dolan's father comments that living alone can be relaxing, but also lonely at times, suggesting that Dolan look for a wife who can cook well, just as his brother did. Dolan says that this advice is something Marco also gives him from time to time, but he prefers to enjoy the single life a bit longer. The father also brings up the swamp problem that Dolan plans to solve the next day. Hearing this, the mother becomes worried, as the place is far away and the road is dangerous. Dolan assures her that he doesn't intend to take risks, saying that he will only take a look at the swamp. The father, in turn, says that Dolan is already an adult and doesn't plan to interfere in his decisions, but asks him to return safely so as not to worry his mother. Dolan promises to come back and tell them everything he experiences at the site. The next day, he is approached by a crowd, including a nun named Leticia, who approaches to give him a blessing from the goddess. His magic tutor, on the other hand, reveals that she has a bad feeling about the journey and asks him to be careful, handing him a lunchbox she prepared especially for him. Dolan leaves the village, and on his way to the swamp, he explains that the lizards used to interact with the inhabitants of Verum, but stopped appearing, which raised concerns among everyone. Thus, Dolan volunteered to investigate what happened. Upon reaching the swamp, he notices that the power of the earth elementals is strong, while the water element is weakening, which has made it impossible for the lizards to live there. At that moment, he recalls a prediction made by his tutor and becomes more alert to his surroundings, as she is never wrong in her intuitions. Dolan hears a noise coming from the vegetation and quickly draws his sword to defend himself. When the creature appears, he discovers it is a Lamia, a snake girl. The Lamia questions what to do with him now that he has invaded her area and tries to use seductive movements she learned from her mother. But Dolan is confused, finding it strange. Tired, she explains that she doesn't intend to fight, but soon another monster appears, trying to attack her off guard. Dolan acts quickly, protecting her and taking her to a safe place. She asks what that was, and Dolan explains that it is an earth elemental that has lost control. He mentions that he used to see lizards in the swamp until they all disappeared. Believing the earth elemental to be the cause of the lizard's disappearance, Dolan recalls an earthquake that occurred in the region, affecting the elementals. During the conversation, the girl introduces herself as Selena and says she is capable of using magic. Dolan then suggests they fight together, but Selena reminds him that Lamias are earth monsters, and her magic won't do much damage to the elemental. However, she remembers her racial spell, which might work against the earth elemental. Thus, they begin working together. In the middle of the battle, Selena wonders if she will really be able to fight alongside Dolan, as they have just met and do not trust each other. Noticing his signal, she feels encouraged, and the two launch their attack, with Selena casting a spell against the earth elemental, while Dolan uses draconic magic on his sword, slicing the creature in half. Selena is relieved but ends up being buried by the monster's sand, leaving her a bit upset. Dolan goes to her to check if she's okay and takes the opportunity to thank her for her help, as without her magic, he wouldn't have been able to defeat the creature. They then head to a cave together to find shelter. While in the cave, Selena notices that Dolan is not afraid of her, and he explains that she is different from the Lamias he knows, as they are usually more cautious and aggressive toward humans. Dolan asks what she's doing there, as there are no Lamia villages in the region. Selena explains that Lamias have a rule. They must go out to find a husband when they turn 17, as their race is composed only of women, and in rare exceptions, some give birth to boys. She continues, saying that the Lamia race originated when a human woman was cursed, and this curse was passed on, causing other women to be born half snake, half human. Moreover, all their body fluids contain venom, and they must choose a strong husband who can withstand the venom, otherwise the man might die. Upon hearing this, Dolan realizes that they indeed face more difficulties than other races in finding a partner, given that they follow all these rules. After preparing the food, Dolan serves the dish to Selena and shares that he used to eat with his family around the hot pot in winter. Selena, in turn, observes Dolan's gentle smile as he talks about his family and realizes that he truly loves them very much. At that moment, Dolan realizes that the lonely dragon he once was no longer exists. Noticing his reflective look, Selena asks if something is wrong, and Dolan replies that it's nothing major, just reflecting on how she is right in saying that he truly loves his family. The next morning, they prepare to say goodbye. Dolan says he will return to his village, while Selena informs him that she will head south in search of a husband. Thus, they part ways, but not for long. In the middle of the journey, Selena is approached by two men who come closer to warn her of the dangers of traveling alone. She, however, reassures the two, saying she is stronger than she appears. Taking a closer look at the girl, the two men notice that, instead of legs, she has a snake tail. Startled upon realizing she is a Lamia, they run off, terrified. Meanwhile, Meguro explains that magical potions differ from common medicine as they are made with magically infused ingredients. He emphasizes that extra caution is needed when preparing them, as any mistake could result in a fatal chemical reaction. Meguro then scolds Dolan, who fails in trying to make a magic potion. Ari tries to comfort him, telling him not to feel sad, as even though he isn't very good with potions, he has an extremely sharp eye for medicinal herbs and is very handsome in her eyes. Hearing this, he thanks her for the compliment, but admits he has great difficulty following complex recipes, so he still has a lot of room for improvement. Upon saying this, Meguro begins to analyze Ayer's mixture and finding no issues, dismisses her. Dolan, however, stays there and recalls that during his time living with a dragon, these remedies weren't even necessary for survival, which explains his lack of skill with delicate things. Meguro then reminds Dolan that his offensive magic is really very good, but he still needs to improve a lot in magical medicine. She reassures him, saying there's no need to rush, as the obstacles he now faces are what will make him evolve and grow as a person. After training, everyone gathers to eat. But before the meal, Dolan and the others give thanks to an entity called Mile, a goddess he hasn't seen in a long time. As he leaves, he runs home, and on the way, he encounters Me, a bovine demi-human who shares her milk with all the village inhabitants. She offers him a cup, and he accepts before heading to Albert, his fencing instructor. Upon arriving, Dolan apologizes for being late, but Albert understands since he was training with Meguro. As he greets the children, Dolan looks into the depths of the vegetation and senses the presence of a monster. He waits until nightfall and returns to the same place, carrying a lantern. Entering the forest, he finds the monster, which, in reality, was Celine all along. Dolan asks what she's doing there, but instead of answering, she covers herself and asks him not to look at her at that moment. He refuses, saying it would be a waste not to appreciate her beauty, which doesn't lessen just because he's looking. Surprised by his indifference, Celine asks him to show at least a bit of shame. Dolan explains that desiring beautiful things is a natural instinct, and for that reason, he believes there's nothing shameful about it. Celine slaps him, and he quickly apologizes, realizing he spoke tactlessly. She says it's okay and asks him to forget the incident. Dolan brings up the topic again, asking what she's doing there, as he thought she had gone south in search of a husband. Celine explains that this was her plan, but that all the men ran away upon realizing she was a Lamia. Decided, she resolved to return near the village where Dolan lived, with the intention of finding him. She tells him that, despite finding it frightening to interact with humans, she tried to overcome this barrier, but, in the end, everyone fled from her in terror. Dolan says he hoped to see her again, and is happy it happened so soon. With this happiness, he proposes she come live with him, as he has a plan to help her. Celine remembers that she is a monster, and would therefore end up scaring humans. Dolan explains that in his village there are already many beast people and demi-humans, so everyone is used to unusual figures, and despite the initial mistrust, he believes Celine will soon gain everyone's trust with her gentleness and Lamia skills. Additionally, Dolan admits that her presence would make his life much more enjoyable, but he quickly realizes this sounded like flirting. The girl, in turn, reciprocates the comment, saying that she will also have a lot of fun living by his side. She then asks him to share some of his life energy, saying it was the best she's ever tasted. Dolan says she can receive it whenever she wants, once they are living together. He extends his hand to her and passes some of his energy. The next day, the village captain and some villagers examine monster tracks, deducing it to be a Lamia, a dangerous and powerful being. They hold a meeting with the village chief, and one of the men questions whether the Lamia is truly evil, as she leaves offerings for the villagers. The captain insists they all focus on killing her, ignoring any good deeds she's done. The village chief asks for calm, as he believes the Lamia is too powerful for them to face alone, and suggests they ask for reinforcements from the capital. When Dolan learns of the villagers' reaction, he realizes his plan to integrate Celine failed. But he believes that if they come to know her true nature, they will change their minds. Meguro reprimands Captain Balin, affirming that the Lamia has been kind by leaving offerings, which, to her, means something important. She asks them to wait, as, soon enough, the Lamia will be among them. In the middle of the meeting, they are interrupted by Ira, who arrives to show the results of the divinations. Meguro then informs them that the Lamia's appearance is actually a sign of good luck, reinforcing that they should wait to see what the story reveals. Dolan gets excited and goes to Celine so they can proceed with the final phase of the plan. He explains that the villagers seem less cautious and that the biggest threat would be an elimination squad, which is out of the question for now. The next day, Balin and other important figures from the village meet to discuss the defense against the Lamia, although they are acting somewhat apprehensively. Dolan observes these same people he plans to use in the final phase of the plan, as the garrison is the village's greatest strength. Besides Balin, they are accompanied by the priestess Leticia, a follower of the goddess Mile and the goddess's messenger, capable of deeming Celine ill-intentioned. Celine watches everything from a distance, but remembers her conversation with Dolan the previous night when he said she would only need to save him at the right moment. During training, a guard informs the captain that he has sighted the Lamia. Dolan finds it strange, as he has not yet given Celine the signal to act. Looking closer, he realizes that the presence is of a giant bear, not a Lamia. The captain orders everyone to flee, but Balin's son trips, and the bear lunges at him. Dolan tries to protect him, but Celine runs to save them and drives the bear away with her cursed eyes. Balin orders them to step away, but Dolan defends Celine, stating he is not ungrateful to those who help him. Balin asks if it was she who left offerings, and she confirms. Letitia then intervenes, saying she received a message from the goddess Mile, explaining that Celine is not evil. Letitia then asks everyone to live in harmony with the girl. Upon opening her eyes, Celine faints due to her injuries, and when she wakes up, is given a house to live alone. Balin takes the opportunity to thank her for saving his son, and Dolan welcomes her to the village. And on that same night, Dolan uses his astral form after some time and travels to the clouds, assuming his dragon form. There, he meets the goddess Mireille, and hearing him address her as Goddess Mile, she notices that he has truly grown accustomed to life on Earth. Still, she proceeds to the main topic of their conversation. He is there to thank her for the divine message she sent. Thanks to her, the Lamia was better accepted by the villagers, who started treating her more kindly after seeing the goddess declare her as good-hearted. She admits being impressed that he recognized her even in another body. As for her recognizing him, Miles says she could feel his soul amidst the prayers offered to her. Recalling the enthusiasm he now shows for life, she mentions being amazed by him. After all, Dolan used to complain about his life and how he disliked living. Dolan explains that when his heart was pierced by the hero, he felt no despair about death. However, his rebirth as a human changed his perspective. He noticed that everyone around him valued life deeply and lived as if each day were their last. Even though human lives seemed small compared to celestial beings, humans possessed a far greater brilliance in their approach to life than any other species. Hearing this, Mile notes that Dolan has inherited this human brilliance. Recently, she has seen a pure joy in his heart and soul. The next day, Dolan is awakened by Selena barging into his room, shouting. She notices the smile on his face and asks why he is so happy. Dolan replies that he just had a good dream in which a friend told him kind things. Then he asks her what exactly she is doing there. Selena reminds him that they had agreed to plant potatoes with Christina that day. Meanwhile, the headmistress receives a letter from Christina, with her assistant urging her to read it immediately. The assistant explains that Christina is the pride of the institute, so it's only natural she is eager to know what the girl has to say. The headmistress acknowledges her assistant's point and opens the letter right away. Meanwhile, Christina is continuing her training in the village of Veron with the local vice captain. Some villagers observe the training, noting that the vice captain seems to be struggling. Others defend her, insisting that she hasn't fought seriously yet. However, overhearing the comments, the vice captain says the crowd is talking nonsense. Christina, on the other hand, agrees with them, admitting she hasn't fought seriously yet either. Realizing this, the vice captain promises to go all out next time, but warns that she won't hold back. Christina smiles, saying that now things are heading in the direction she likes. At the end of the duel, the vice captain is defeated, her sword flung far away. She acknowledges Christina's exceptional sword skills, admitting she lost easily. Seeing the vice captain being so self-deprecating, Christina reassures her that she is also quick with a blade. Afterward, the vice captain invites Christina to have lunch together. Christina comments on how, despite the village's hardships, the people are warm and welcoming, eager to make her a part of their lives. At the tavern, the girl quickly brings Christina food. While Christina is enjoying her soup, the girl stares at her, mesmerized by her beauty. Embarrassed, the girl apologizes, saying she got distracted. The captain invites Christina for a drink, but the others advise her against joining his drinking sessions. They warn that once he starts, he doesn't stop until the next morning. Realizing he may have come across as unseemly, the captain apologizes. After the gathering, Christina returns to her room to rest, but ends up getting up shortly after to train outside. Dolan and Selena find her there, knowing she would still be training at that hour. Approaching her, Selena takes Christina's hand and invites her to her house. Once there, Christina is astonished to see Alamia's bed. Selena invites her to stay the night, assuring Christina that her bed guarantees sweet dreams because it's extremely comfortable. Dolan notes that while the bed might be perfect for Lamias, it might not suit humans. Even so, Christina lies down to test it and finds it as comfortable as Selena claimed. Selena explains that the bed was the captain's idea. She then shares how worried she felt upon arriving at the village as a Lamia. However, as she got to know its inhabitants, she fell in love with them and their kindness. Hearing her talk about the villagers and their peculiarities, Dolan chimes in, describing Maida as a sweet-toothed soldier. Noticing Dolan leaning against the wall, the two girls urge him to stop being so formal and join them. Elsewhere, Christina's friends are surprised to see other men preparing to drink the captain's wife's milk. Laughing, the captain asks whether they think they can drink more of his wife's milk than he can. Christina arrives and requests to try some of the milk everyone is talking about. After tasting it, she admits it's as good as people say. The captain challenges Christina to a milk drinking contest. Christina accepts, but jokes that she won't be blamed if the village's supply runs out. Despite being the village's drinking champion, the captain falters. By the end, he is defeated. Satisfied, Christina declares that she could have drunk even more. The captain encourages her to taste Mir's milk too, saying he can't do it himself right now. Christina agrees, and after tasting it, asks for more. Mir is overjoyed by the positive feedback and hugs Christina. Christina smiles, saying she's only able to connect so well with everyone thanks to Dolan and Selena. Meanwhile, the headmistress finishes reading Christina's letter. In it, Christina expresses how much she is enjoying the village of Veron, saying it is becoming dearer to her each day. The villagers are amazed to learn that Christina has befriended a Lamia. It becomes the most talked about topic in the region. Hearing the stories, the headmistress reflects on how quickly the news has spread. Kieran approaches her, asking to learn more about the Lamia. However, the headmistress questions why she is so interested in such a trivial matter. Kieran, a mage from the general government, insists that even though it's just a Lamia, they cannot disregard the potential threat she poses to humans. Moreover, Kieran reminds the headmistress of the unsolved disappearances. Although the headmistress defends the Lamia, noting the divine message from Goddess Mile, Kieran remains firm in her concerns. She orders Selena to be summoned to Galoa immediately for further investigation. A village representative offers to send an emissary right away. Back in Veron, Dolan and Selena are planting potatoes, as planned. Christina plants alongside them with her usual vigor until CL appears, calling everyone to the village square. There, Golda introduces himself as an emissary from the northern border. He questions Dolan about the Lamia he brought to Veron. Dolan confirms the story, but Golda insists that they must take Selena to the general government for verification. Although Dolan argues against it, saying the goddess's divine message should be enough, Golda explains that kingdom law requires formal procedures. Dolan agrees to accompany Selena on the journey. Worried for their safety, Christina decides to head to the institute to inform the headmistress. She hopes the headmistress can use her influence to help. During their journey, Dolan reassures Selena that the procedures will be quick. However, Selena expresses guilt for causing trouble. Dolan tries to comfort her, pulling her close. Meanwhile, Christina reaches the institute and speaks with the headmistress, who reassures her that Selena will not be harmed. The headmistress explains that the general government suspects Selena of being involved in the disappearances. She believes this misunderstanding will be resolved. Just as Dolan and Selena are called outside by Golda, the situation in Veron escalates. And as for the accusation against Selena, the director explains that she couldn't have done such a thing, as she lives in Verum. However, if they want to keep insisting on this story, the suspicion will certainly continue to fall on Selena. After all, Kieran wields considerable power in the general government. Hearing this, Christina becomes irritated and asks if there is something they can do about it. Regarding the director, she explains that acting carelessly could lead to accusations that they are overstepping their boundaries. Moreover, the director is also concerned about something else. Meanwhile, Kieran finally approaches Selena and asks about the person next to her. At this, Dolan introduces himself as a resident of Veron village. Then, Kieran decides to take them to eat something before initiating the necessary procedures. At the table, Kieran says this is her way of compensating Selena for bringing her there. After all, the girl must have been worried as she was being taken to an unfamiliar place. At this, Dolan thanks Kieran for her consideration, but says that Selena would need to go to Galoa anyway if she wanted to continue living in Verum. Hearing this, Kieran offers to handle all the paperwork for the girl. Selena, in turn, says she was scared when the soldiers suddenly appeared as she thought they were there to kill her. Hearing this, Kieran says that could have been a possibility since they were worried that Selena might be controlling the villagers with her cursed eyes. But seeing the current situation, Kieran realizes she was worried unnecessarily. After all, she would never eliminate Selena now that she recognizes the girl's purity. Meanwhile, Christina continues talking to the director in her office until, suddenly, Golda appears. Asks to speak with the director. Kieran and the others were eating when, suddenly, Dolan and Selena collapsed at the table. Meanwhile, Golda mentions the recent incident involving young women who disappeared in Galoa and asks if Christina has heard about it. She says she has, and also notes that none of them were ever found. However, in responding, Christina realizes that this matter has nothing to do with Selena. But Golda says there is a certain mage living in Galoa, and according to circulating rumors, this mage is over 300 years old. Since she is human, Golda deduces that she has been using forbidden magic to stay alive. After all, being human, this mage should have died a long time ago. According to the theories, the mage used forbidden magic to possess the bodies of young women and continue living longer. Until suddenly, this same mage became interested in a specific Lamia. In this case, Selena herself. Having explained all this context, Golda states that they are out of time and must go to the Lamia immediately. Meanwhile, Kieran gets excited at the thought that Selena's body is closer to becoming hers. With that, she grabs a knife and decides to start cutting into the girl, only to think about the next step later. But before she could do anything, Dolan wakes up and orders her to stay away from Selena. Hearing him, Kieran says she miscalculated the drug dosage. As Dolan senses a strong smell of blood coming from the magic circle beneath them, he asks Kieran how many people she killed there. However, she simply ignores him and tries to stab him with a knife. At this, Dolan repeats the same question as before, but Kieran says she doesn't have the exact number of deaths since she stopped counting when the casualties exceeded 100. When confronted, she explains that she used those people solely for a small experiment aimed at taking the most beautiful parts of them and attaching them to her body, making Kieran more beautiful at the expense of the lives of others who did not agree to serve as sacrifices. Hearing her speak so nonchalantly, Dolan recalls that this is forbidden magic. Therefore, he asks if she made a pact with the devil. Kieran says yes, and begins talking about all the parts of her body. Although she already feels beautiful, Kieran believes it's time to change her face. Hearing how she treats the lives of her fellow beings, Dolan calls her depraved. However, Kieran retorts by saying he is a poor fool for not understanding the beauty before his eyes. Additionally, she informs him that her research has been recognized by many powerful people. Therefore, she says he should be happy that Selena was chosen as her next body. But in the middle of their argument, Selena wakes up and begins reprimanding Kieran's cruel actions. After all the other people she killed probably went to her seeking help, only to end up being used in this way. Hearing this, Kieran shows no understanding of it as something bad. After all, according to her, all those people were doomed to lives of struggle. Upon hearing so many absurdities, Selena admits that Golda was always right about Kieran. Hearing this, Kieran is completely confused, as Golda is one of her subordinates. At this, Dolan recalls that every scoundrel like her has a common problem: they talk too much. In Golda's case, he used a magical device to listen in on all of Kieran's conversations, and thus learned all about her malicious intentions. In the middle of the argument, they are surprised by Christina and the others, who enter the place by breaking through the walls. The director apologizes for involving the two in such a complicated situation. As for Golda, she orders her men to arrest Kieran. The director explains that Kieran's plans were to frame Selena for the kidnappings and then kill her, using the excuse that Selena resisted and therefore needed to be neutralized. Hearing the tone of disgust everyone uses to refer to her actions, Kieran says they will never be able to understand her, as they have all been blessed with beauty. As for her, Kieran learned from childhood that she was not a pretty girl like the others, and because of that, began killing other people just to have a more beautiful face. Hearing the director belittling all her efforts, Kieran becomes enraged and says she will show them the fruits of her 300 years of research. With that, she transforms into a giant slime and demands that they hand over the Lamia to her immediately. However, Dolan promptly protects Selena and explains that what the enemy just did is called body fusion, which involves combining parts of various species using forbidden magic. Seeing what she is capable of, Dolan realizes that Kieran, in fact, made a pact with the devil, as she herself had stated. Against Selena, Kieran tries to advance, but the girl uses her cursed eyes to stop the villain's movements. In the meantime, the director instructs everyone to leave the place. However, Kieran manages to move again and tries to attack Selena. Christina acts quickly and cuts off Kieran's fingers, stating that harming her friends is a crime punishable by death. Therefore, Christina begins cutting her into several pieces. until Kieran starts complaining about the pain. To put an end to the situation, Kieran uses powerful dark magic. Meanwhile, the director tries to help but realizes she cannot summon underground spirits. Because of this, she believes everyone there will end up buried alive. Dolan, in turn, prepares to attack but first asks Kieran if she truly feels happy the way she is. She starts screaming, claiming they should recognize her beauty and kneel before her. Hearing this, Dolan states that hands stained with blood can never achieve true beauty. Dolan then hurries and uses his celestial magic, finishing Kieran instantly. After solving all those problems, Dolan takes Selena back to the village and forces her to study. In the process, she feels her head exploding, but Dolan reassures her, saying it is part of the learning process. Additionally, he explains that Selena must be able to express her thoughts in the language of that land. During the studies, Christina appears to see how the girl's progress is going. Selena only says that her head is spinning, but Dolan comments that, at the very least, she is already able to read a lot. Upon hearing this, Christina suggests that Dolan is an excellent teacher. In the middle of their conversation, they are surprised by the director accompanied by Commissioner Golda. Golda apologizes for not having arrived at the scene earlier, but Dolan understands, as he was dealing with the rest of the incident alone. Golda apologizes again for involving the two in that mess. That said, he lowers his head as a way of humbling himself for his mistake. Embarrassed, Selena asks him to raise his head. After all, everyone came out of the situation unscathed. As for Dolan, he explains that the antidote given by the tutor was very effective, neutralizing Kieran's poison as soon as they ingested it. Golda hands over Selena's authorization for her to stay in Galoa, as well as her registration to live in Verum without any problems. After that, Dolan is taken to talk to Denzel, which allows him to learn more about Galoa. During the trip, Selena sees an object falling and decides to return it to the little girl who lost it. However, they run away as people still have the impression that Lamias are dangerous beings. Selena decides to ignore it and returns to what she was doing before. At the end of it all, after resolving their issues, everyone says their goodbyes. However, before leaving, Denzel invites Dolan to join the Institute, claiming that his extraordinary magical powers would be very useful. Surprised by the invitation, Dolan says he is already very busy with village matters. On the way back home, Christina notices Dolan is deep in thought and asks if he is considering accepting the offer. He admits that going to the Institute would be beneficial, but believes he still has much to do in the village. However, upon further reflection, he begins to consider accepting the offer. And my friends, the lesson here is, even if you're ugly or a bit of a loser, don't try to steal other people's bodies. And of course, avoid making a pact with the devil. Those things never end well. See you in the next video with another episode of this amazing anime. Peace.